The rain came down like needles that evening, sharp, relentless, uninvited. Inside the sleek black SUV slicing through the Lekki Expressway, silence stretched between Kemi and her husband, Deji. Not the comforting kind, but the kind that grows like a crack between walls. A silence full of things unsaid. They were returning from a charity gala. Deji had been unusually quiet all night, barely touching her hand, barely looking her way. And Kemi had felt it in her bones. Something was shifting. Something was wrong. "I asked you a question," she said, her voice barely above the hum of the wipers. "Are you still in this with me?" Deji gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles pale. "Can we not do this now?" That was the last thing she heard before the truck swerved into their lane. There was no time to scream, just a blinding crash. Metal against metal. Glass exploding like gunfire. And then, blackness. When Kemi woke up, everything was white. The ceiling, the bedsheets, the sterile smell of antiseptic clung to the air. Pain roared through her spine before she could even blink. A nurse hovered above. "Don't move, ma'am. You've been in an accident. But you're stable now." Kemi tried to speak, but her throat was sandpaper. She could barely lift her arm. Panic clawed at her chest. "Where's my husband?" she whispered. The nurse hesitated. "He's outside." But he wasn't. Not that day. Not the next. Not for the entire first week. When Deji finally walked in, he looked like a guest, not a grieving partner. His designer shirt was crisp, his cologne too strong, and his eyes, hollow. Kemi tried to sit up, wincing. "You came." "I did," he said, voice cold. "The doctors say, you may never walk again." She blinked at him, waiting for him to reach for her hand, to say we'll get through this together. But he didn't. He stood like a man at a funeral, except the body was still breathing. "Deji," she whispered. "Please." "I'm sorry, Kemi," he said flatly. "But I didn't sign up for this." It was like being hit all over again. He left that same night. And just like that, the man who once held her close on Sunday mornings was gone without warning, without goodbye. The wheelchair arrived before the discharge papers. Kemi's world shrank to 4 cold walls, pitying stares, and an echoing silence she couldn't run from. Months passed. She stopped counting. But something inside her refused to die. A small voice, buried beneath the grief, whispered every morning, "Get up. Not with your legs yet, but with your will." It was a nurse named Ifyananya who first believed in her. She spoke of possibilities. Of therapy, of trials abroad, of miracles. Kemi didn't believe in miracles. Not until the day a stranger walked into her room with a camera, a microphone, and a question that would change everything. "Can we share your story?" Kemi looked up, her eyes wet, her spirit exhausted. "What for?" she asked. The woman smiled softly. "Because someone out there might believe you can walk again, even if you don't." And Kemi said yes. But what she didn't know then was that the story would go viral, and it would take her straight to a wedding she was never invited to. The video was barely 3 minutes long. It opened with Kemi sitting in her wheelchair by the hospital window, her eyes distant, her voice low. She spoke about the accident, about Deji, about waking up to a body she didn't recognize and a future that looked like a locked room. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It was real. By the next morning, the video had 40,000 views. 2 days later, over 1 million. People flooded the comment section. "You're not alone, sis. My aunt walked again after a similar crash. Don't give up. Tell her to check the XYZ Foundation. They sponsor spinal therapy abroad." A woman from Canada sent a voice note through the hospital. "We're raising money to fly you here for treatment. Don't give up." Kemi didn't know whether to cry or laugh. She hadn't asked for any of this. But suddenly, strangers believed in her more than anyone she'd ever loved. By the end of the week, a fundraiser launched. Over 50 million naira came in within 2 months. A famous musician reposted the video. NGOs offered assistance. A foreign hospital in Istanbul confirmed they could help with an aggressive long-term therapy program. Her body was still broken, but something inside her had started to heal. Her faith. When the plane took off, Kemi looked out the window and whispered to herself, "I'm not coming back the same." The treatment was brutal. Every morning started with cold pools and endless exercises. Her muscles screamed. Her hands bled. There were days she collapsed, unable to breathe from the pain. But the Turkish therapist, Dr. Ali, never flinched. "You want to walk again?" he'd say. "Then don't cry. Move." Slowly, something shifted. Her toes twitched. Her thighs trembled. Her body remembered itself. Kemi pushed harder. No phone calls. No social media. She cut off the world. Especially Nigeria. Especially anything that had to do with Deji. Until one night, while reviewing therapy videos, her cousin Funmi called via WhatsApp, crying with laughter. "You won't believe who's trending." Kemi frowned. "What happened?" Funmi flipped her camera. The screen showed a luxury wedding invitation, embossed in gold, now viral on a gossip blog. Tech entrepreneur Deji Ajayi set to marry lifestyle influencer Mimi Gold. Kemi went still. She hadn't heard his name in over 4 years. Hadn't seen his face since he walked out of that hospital room. "Guess what?" Funmi said, her voice thick with emotion. "They're doing the wedding in Lagos. White wedding. In 2 months. Publicity everywhere." Kemi's chest tightened. Not with jealousy. Not with longing. But with something deeper, like justice demanding its moment. Funmi leaned closer to the screen. "I know you're still healing, but if you wanted to show up, I swear, it would shut the internet down." Kemi said nothing. But that night, when she stood up from the therapy bar and took her first unassisted step, she didn't cry. She smiled. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was walking towards something, and Lagos had no idea what was coming. The boutique in Istanbul was quiet, tucked away on a cobbled street scented with jasmine. Sunlight spilled through the windows, catching the delicate shimmer of silk dresses lined on gold racks. Kemi stood in front of the mirror, back straight, no cane. The tailor adjusted the fabric on her waist, pinning a champagne gold gown that hugged her in all the right places. She barely recognized herself, toned arms, defined cheekbones, a fire in her eyes that had long been missing. "Special occasion?" the Turkish woman asked in accented English. Kemi smiled faintly. "You could say that." Back in Lagos, the city buzzed with talk of the wedding. Deji and Mimi were everywhere. Instagram reels, bridal shower highlights, influencers posing beside the couple like they were royalty. Hashtag Demi2025 trended for days. Articles praised Deji for moving on after tragedy, and referred to Kemi only as his previous wife who faded from the public eye. Not a word about the wheelchair. Not a mention of how he left. Kemi read every post in silence. Each one added fuel to the quiet fire building inside her. She didn't need revenge, but she needed to be seen. Funmi, her cousin and ever-loyal hype woman, had already RSVP'd. "Front row, baby. I'll act shocked on cue." Kemi raised an eyebrow. "You're attending the wedding? I have to go. Someone has to be inside to film your entrance," Funmi said, grinning. "And besides, I heard the jollof will be catered by Jevanik." Kemi chuckled for the first time in weeks. But beneath the humor was a plan. A week before the wedding, Kemi landed quietly in Lagos. No announcement, no post, just the sound of her heels clicking confidently through Murtala Muhammad Airport. She stayed in a small hotel on Victoria Island. Close enough to the venue, far enough from drama. On the night before the wedding, she stood by her window, staring at the glowing skyline. For a moment, doubt crept in. Would it be petty? Would it be cruel? Then she remembered the hospital bed. The moment he said, "I didn't sign up for this." She whispered to her reflection, "Neither did I." And just like that, the doubt vanished. The next morning, the wedding venue glistened under the sun. A luxurious beachfront estate in Lekki, lined with floral arches and white tents, looking like something out of a Nollywood dream. Deji looked every bit the charming groom, tuxedo sharp, beard lined to perfection. Guests swooned. Cameras clicked. Mimi, the bride, floated down the aisle in a glittering mermaid gown, all teeth and filters. Just as the officiant cleared his throat to begin the vows, the crowd stirred. Some turned. A hush fell. From the main path, a woman approached slowly, heels clicking on stone, gold gown glistening, chin held high. It was Kemi. She wasn't limping. She wasn't trembling. She was walking strong, radiant, alive. Gasps echoed. Phones came out. Screens lit up. Someone dropped their wine glass. Mimi's smile faltered. Deiji's face drained of color. Kemi stopped just a few feet from them and said nothing. She didn't have to, because her presence said it all. And the wedding had only just begun. Silence wrapped around the wedding like a tight noose. For a few seconds it felt like time had frozen. The guests, the cameras, the music, all paused, caught between disbelief and awe. Kemi stood tall in her gold dress, the Lego sun casting a soft halo around her. Her skin glowed. Her eyes held no tears, just power. Grace under fire. From across the aisle, Deiji blinked like he was seeing a ghost. "Kemi?" he muttered. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She just looked him dead in the eye and smiled. It wasn't the smile of the girl he once married. It wasn't the smile of the broken woman in a hospital bed. It was the smile of someone who had died and been reborn. The officiant cleared his throat, awkwardly. Shall we proceed?" Mimi's jaw clenched. She forced a smile, but her eyes screamed panic. "Deiji, who is this?" Kemi answered before he could. "I'm his wife." Gasps tore through the crowd. "No," Deiji snapped, trying to regain control. "You're my ex-wife." Kemi tilted her head. "Funny. I never signed any divorce papers." Funmi, watching from the crowd, covered her mouth, grinning like a cat with milk. Her phone camera stayed steady. The murmur spread like wildfire. "Is this true?" Mimi whispered, her voice trembling. Deiji's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She disappeared," he finally barked. "She left the country, vanished." "I left," Kemi said calmly, "after you abandoned me in a hospital, told me I wasn't worth staying for, and moved on like I died." The whispers turned to quiet outrage. Older aunties shook their heads. Someone from the press stepped closer. Deiji's voice cracked. "This is a setup." Kemi smiled wider. "No, this is closure." She turned to Mimi, eyes softening just a little. "I'm not here for you. I don't know what lies he told you, but you deserve to know who you're marrying." Mimi stared at Deiji. "You said she was out of your life. She was supposed to be." Deiji yelled, desperation rising. A deep, rumbling voice called from the back. "Is that really Kemi?" An older man said. "The one from the accident?" Kemi turned slightly. "I'm not the same woman," she said. "I'm better." Then she did something no one expected. She pulled out a slim white envelope from her clutch, walked up to the stage, and handed it directly to Deiji. "What's this?" he asked, confused. "The divorce papers," she said, smiling sweetly. "Signed. Official. You're free now." The crowd erupted. Cheers. Laughter. Cameras flashing like lightning. She turned, heels clicking with confidence as she walked back down the aisle the same way she came in. Only this time, every step was a message. She had come full circle, but just before she reached the gate, someone grabbed her arm. Kemi turned and gasped, because the person staring back at her was someone she never expected to see again. Someone who hadn't been at the accident, but may have been behind it. Kemi froze. Standing before her was Whale, Deiji's childhood friend, his former business partner, the third person who was supposed to be in that SUV the night of the accident, but conveniently wasn't. "Whale." Her voice was cautious, but steady. He looked older, gray brushing the edges of his hair. Designer shades perched like armor, guilt heavy in his eyes. "You look incredible," he said quietly. "Save the compliments," Kemi replied, her posture sharp. "Why are you here?" He glanced around. The wedding was still buzzing. Guests whispering. Mimi storming off somewhere with her makeup artist. Deji frozen with the divorce papers in his hand. Whale leaned in closer. "I've been wanting to talk to you since the video went viral," he said. "But you disappeared again. Because I wanted peace," she snapped. "And you weren't exactly part of the solution." Whale swallowed. "I wasn't in that car, Kemi. But I was supposed to be. And I know why I wasn't." Kemi narrowed her eyes. "Explain." He lowered his voice. "Deji told me to come in a separate car that night. Said he had a surprise planned for you. I thought he meant a proposal upgrade or something dramatic. But we were already married." "I know. And that's what made it weird. Then after the crash, he barely spoke about it. Just told me not to visit. Said the lawyers would handle everything. The next thing I know, he's deleting CCTV footage from his Lekki office and transferring millions from your joint accounts." Kemi's heart pounded. Whale continued. "That night wasn't just a crash, Kemi. I think Deji knew what was coming. I think it was planned." Her legs wobbled, not from weakness, but from rage. "You're saying he meant to have me injured?" "I can't prove it," Whale said. "But I've got people digging, and I kept screenshots of some shady transactions. The accident, the divorce silence, the money, none of it adds up." Kemi took a deep breath, grounding herself. "Why now?" "Because I should have spoken up 5 years ago," Whale said. "And I didn't. I let him bury you while I stayed silent." Kemi stepped back, mind spinning. Everything she had endured, every therapy session, every sleepless night, all built on a betrayal deeper than she ever imagined. But this time she wasn't powerless. She looked Whale in the eye. "You still have those screenshots?" He nodded. "Then send them. All of them. Now." As she spoke, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She ignored it until it buzzed a second time and then a third. Finally, she glanced at the screen. A voice note. From Deji. Just sent. She opened it. And what she heard made her entire body go cold. It was Deji's voice. Angry. Drunk. And it said, "She thinks she's won. But she has no idea what I really buried in that accident." The voice note echoed in Kemi's ears long after it ended. "She has no idea what I really buried in that accident." Her blood ran cold, not from fear, but fury. What else had Deji hidden? What truth had he buried under the twisted metal of that night? She stepped outside the venue, her heels hitting the marble floor like a war drum. Whale followed closely behind. "What does it mean?" he asked. Kemi's eyes didn't blink. "It means there's more. Something bigger. And I'm going to find it." The next few days were a storm. With Whale screenshots and contacts, Kemi discovered that just 3 weeks before the accident, Deji had taken out a massive life insurance policy on her. The beneficiary? Himself. There was more. Altered hospital records. Erased dashcam footage. A falsified police report that blamed brake failure, even though the car had passed inspection just days before. Kemi and Funmi compiled every document, every bank transfer, every note. And when she was ready, she dropped everything at the doorstep of one of the biggest investigative journalists in Nigeria. 2 weeks later, the headline hit. Exclusive. Tech mogul Deji Ajayi, accused of orchestrating wife's car accident for insurance fraud. The internet exploded. Sponsors dropped him. Mimi deleted all her wedding photos. A whistleblower from the insurance firm came forward. The police reopened the case. Deji went into hiding. But Kemi? She stepped fully into the light. She granted one interview, just one. A calm, graceful sit-down where she told her story. The pain, the betrayal, the therapy, the first steps, and the moment she walked into the wedding not to interrupt it, but to end it. "I'm not here because I was broken," she said. "I'm here because I survived." 3 months later, she launched the Rise Foundation, a support network for women abandoned after life-altering trauma. Her first event sold out. Her name trended, not for being a victim, but for becoming a voice. Lara, one of the women from her therapy group, hugged her tightly after the conference. "You've given me more than support," she said. "You've given me proof that healing is possible." That night, as Kemi stood by her hotel balcony, the city lights dancing below, Fummi handed her a small wrapped box. "What's this?" Kemi asked. "Open it." Inside, a custom gold bracelet engraved with the words, "She walks. She rises. She remembers." Kemi smiled, her fingers running over the letters. She had lost everything, then found herself, then walked into a room that once symbolized her deepest pain and reclaimed her power. As the wind blew through her hair and the night held her like an old friend, she whispered to the stars, "I didn't just survive you, Deji. I became something you'll never understand." And with that, she walked inside, closed the door, and finally allowed herself to rest. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you. We hope to see you in our next video.